How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Stage Fright from 1987. There's actually a lot of movies called Stage Fright. We're going to be talking about the 87 film that's also known as Aquarius or Deliria. Personally, I think out of those three titles, Stage Fright has to win. This is directed by Michele Soavi. He was a protege of Dario Argento. He also directed The Church, which we talked about on here a while ago. And he also did another one, The Cemetery Man, which was supposed to be pretty good, but I haven't managed to find that one yet. Anyway, this movie stars David Brandon, Barbara Cupsey, and Domenico Fiore. And overall, this movie is really good. It's one that I've liked for quite some time, ever since I first saw it, and I'm glad to finally be talking about it now, because like I said, it is a personal favorite of mine. It's one of the best standalone slashers, so if you guys are looking for deeper cut slashers, something beyond the Freddy and Jason and Michael stuff, this is one of the best standalones. This is also an Italian film, so it's kind of a Giallo slasher. Giallo movies started out after Psycho, and they started out as like hyper-violent murder mysteries, and then they kind of changed and evolved, and sometimes they had magic and stuff. But after A Bay of Blood, that was actually A Bay of Blood, a very early film, and measured by tropes, some would say the first slasher. So we got a lot of later Giallo movies that were basically slasher movies, but to be fair, they had a good early part in slasher development. So anyway, a slasher movie that is very stylish. You're talking about a protege of Dario Argento. You would expect that. There's some really cool camera angles, POV of the killer, but he's running around actually pretty fast. Some interesting shots. For example, there's a shot of this key towards the end, and it's shown in some very interesting ways. It's a small but important detail, and the way they choose to shoot it, very, very interesting. And of course, being an Italian movie, we get some pretty good over-the-top music. Now, one thing I do want to say is this is actually a really good movie if you're new to Italian horror, because a lot of Italian horror can get very, very experimental and sometimes very, very surreal, and some of them get a little hard to follow. So this, even though it is experimental and stylish, it is very legible, and I think it's a good way to introduce someone to both deep-cut slashers and Italian horror. Overall, it is really fun, and just its base concept has a lot going for it. It's a bunch of actors getting locked in a stage, doing a sort of all-night rehearsal thing. That's a cool setup. The killer has this fun big owl mask on. It's really cool. Again, it balances cool and goofy and iconic very, very well. In fact, like I said, I've liked this movie for a long time. I actually, a bit ago, I made this little action figure of the killer out of an off-brand G.I. Joe and some air-dry clay. A goofy little thing that I always puts a smile on my face whenever I see him standing there. But it's a slasher. The kills in this movie are really fun and well thought out. They all try to have some sort of gimmick, and they really do try to, push and do something bigger and creative. And yes, sometimes this movie does get cheesy, and at times very cheesy, but it's always the best kind of cheesy. Yeah, sometimes people turn into mannequins and get their head cut off and it just goes flying, but you know what? Silly, cheesy fun, I definitely do like it. So maybe this isn't the biggest critical darling or anything, maybe it doesn't necessarily reinvent the wheel, but it is stylish. At times it's cheesy, but it's always just really fun. And in turn, this has always been a personal favorite slasher of mine. I really do like it. In order to analyze this further, let's talk a little bit about the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers. I'll try to steer away from talking too specifically about the end, but I do want to bring up points in the plot that I think are interesting in order to analyze this film a little further. So the setup, we get these actors, they're doing a play called The Night Owl, which is a really weird, kind of surreal, semi-erotic play about a psychosexual killer picking off women in the streets late at night. And of course you get the very stereotypical director yelling at them, "No, bigger, bigger!" So the play's chugging along, however their costume designer gets murdered. There's a nearby asylum and a real-life serial killer escapes from it. Well, the producer and the director step aside, and the producer says, the director says, "I know how this play is going to be a hit. I've told the press that the person that got killed wasn't our costume designer, but a very important actor, and she got killed from the character in the play." You see, the directors decided to do some last-minute rewrites and change the nameless killer in Night Owl to have the same name as the real-life killer that just struck. So he is cashing in on a tragedy, and he goes up to his cast and he's like, "None of you are famous, you're all upset, and I get that, but bear in mind you're working on a percentage rate. If the play's a success, you get paid a lot. We're opening early. We're not opening in a week, we're opening in 3 days, and I want you all to stay and practice because we are going to cash in on this tragedy and our play is going to be a huge hit." He actually has one of the actresses lock them in and hide the key, so they're stuck here overnight doing a long-term, intense rehearsal for the new version of the script. And I think that's a really fun setup, you know? A fun overnight ordeal, being locked in a strange place like a theater, and the way the theater has the stage, but then all these back rooms, you know, the costume room, a workshop, and of course the rafters. You gonna do stuff with rafters in a stage play movie, right? So they go in and they go about their business, but what they don't know is that real-life killer who, you know, killed someone outside a little bit ago, he's still at the theater, and now they're locked in with him. He's managed to steal one of the owl masks, so he's dressed up like the killer in the play, and he's going to go attack them. They, of course, realize that the killer is now real, and they try to get out, but of course, wouldn't you know it, the girl that hid the key is one of the first to go, and now we're stuck here. Okay, yeah, personally, I do think the reveal comes a little bit early. I would have liked a little bit more messing around and just being a fun stage crew, because the characters are pretty fun and likable, you know, these bubbly actor characters and all the people working behind the scenes. They're a group of good characters, and we do jump into the action a little bit quick, but that being said, even though we jump in quick, it somehow manages to keep its momentum. We get a lot of other slashers that wait till way too far to the end to actually get going, and that's because slashers burn hot and bright. You gotta wait sometimes, because when the kills start flying, you can go through characters too quick, and then what are you supposed to do to fill up your runtime? So, by some surprising feat, even though the action starts really early, it does stay going, and there's lots of stuff to talk about. Do we stay together? Do we split up? Where could the key be hidden? I don't know. What are tools we can use? Who do we trust? What do we do? And there's a lot of just interesting stuff in that setup, being locked in a building and knowing where the killer is. It's really cool. And like I said earlier, I do like the characters, but we do get some interesting elements like some jerks in here. But the jerks, again, sometimes in horror movies, jerks can just be annoying, but the jerks are pretty fun, like the director, that stereotypical, self-absorbed director, but the idea that when they're trying to escape a killer, he would still be directing them, So, they're not doing a play, they're trying to survive, and he's like, you two, go over there, we're going to do this. He's still the leader, which I thought was pretty funny. And, that whole just self-absorbed attitude, it does play off as more funny than annoying, and I really do like this character, even though he is a jerk. And there's other good characters as well. For example, they do this really fun gag where in the play, the Night Owl character is this evil psychosexual killer that is picking off women, but there's a gag where the actor that plays him is actually gay. So in real life, he wouldn't be stalking and killing women. So there's a fun bit there. And a lot of the characters, yeah, maybe not all of them are super well defined, but they're fun enough to follow, and I do really like them. And also, how I said earlier, we jump into the action a little quick. In turn, we actually do jump into the final girl segment pretty quick as well. But again, it keeps up the intensity and goes, even though it is a longer final girl segment than we're used to, it does stay moving and it does stay intense. As I hinted at earlier, whenever you do a stage play movie, you have to go up to the rafters. That's a really fun, intense sequence. I don't want to spoil too much of the ending, so I'll hint at these vaguely. There is a sequence in here with a cable. That is one of my favorite sequences in slasher chase sequences, is the cable scene from this movie. It's just a really cool shot. And also, there is one scene, which again I won't spoil, but at one point, the final girl is still alive. The killer doesn't know that, and it's something I hadn't really thought of before. But what does a slasher killer do after he's killed everybody and thinks he's won? In this scene, what the killer does when he's alone is a very good, interesting, iconic scene. A really fun bit of a set piece there. And I really do love what the killer does when he thinks he's won. But a very good movie. Like I said, at times it can be a little cheesy, and at times it can be kind of a B slasher, but so much of this is filmed stylistically, and it does keep the energy up even though it starts really quick. And there's so many scenes in this movie that are among my favorite in slasher movies, and I really love this one. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my slasher movies playlist, which I think is actually over 100 videos long at this point. I've talked about a lot of stuff. Friday the 13th movies, Halloween movies, Texas Chainsaw movies. If you're fans of Italian horror, you can find my review of A Bay of Blood in there as well. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.